I don't know, I think just sometimes when I've had a few too many gins, I'm just sitting in a pub and I just start being like, what if we did this? Now, if you're like me, lockdown is making you ask yourself a lot of questions. Here are some of the ones that haunt me on a daily basis. Now that the world is indoors with extra time, can we all just sit down and work out if Adnan Syed really did kill Hae Min Lee? Because that just seems like one of those questions that if we all sit down and think hard enough about, would be able to work out the answer. And I want to know why there wasn't a payphone by that Best Buy in 1999, and yet I'm asking myself that if I ever get on a bus again, will I be able to fully stand up? Will I be able to stay erect on a moving vehicle, or is that just like a skill that I've lost now? Should I already be mentally preparing myself for all of the slow motion reunion videos that were going to pop up on Facebook when everyone gets to hug each other again? As a midtrovert, I'm constantly wondering whether I more often miss parties, or I'm relieved that I no longer have to attend any. What's the meaning of mobile data anymore? Why do I have this bundle of roaming data when I will never roam again? When will they come out with a floor to 5K app? Is that soon? Is that soon? Could I ever have imagined a world previously when on leaving the house, Craig says to me, don't touch anyone, and I go, I wouldn't dream of it. And that's not a weirdly sinister exchange. And the biggest question for me at the moment is, am I settling into subservience slightly too easily? It's been 2 weeks and I'm like, sure, I can only walk once a day, that's fine. Limited access to movement and resources, that's chill, just let me know when I'm allowed again, yeah? I'm obviously also doing it for good reason, and I know that, but it was also just worrying how easily I could adjust my brain to that. Not the rebel without cause I thought I was. I am now a proletarian with cause. But I thought, as we're asking so many questions, and while everything is up in the air, I mentioned this in my last video, the positive panic video about coronavirus, but more generally, I think I wanted to dive a bit deeper into the kind of questions we could ask. And while it's impossible to have good thoughts and then derive meaning from a bad situation, I think that we're often disempowered as citizens. Oh, my banner fell down. We are not all together now. The ghost of Margaret Thatcher strikes again. But don't worry, I'm here. But yeah, I think we're often disempowered as citizens to have ideas, have positive ideas. We generally set a quite bad example by our curriculum, or also by our mainstream media, who wouldn't know solution-based journalism if it coughed in their face. Two exceptions to this are occasionally The Guardian and definitely Double Down News. If you don't support them on Patreon, that's what I do, and it makes me feel a lot calmer about the future of news. Anyway, today I thought it would be cool to sit down and have some ideas together about how the world could be better. I often have these random, like, organisational ideas that I have no qualifications about, no real background understanding of the core issues apart from my general civilian knowledge. But sometimes I just think it's good fuel for the soul to imagine things differently and imagine exciting systems of how things could work. I know from my profession in publishing that outsiders' insight into my industry can often be quite refreshing. Even if they don't hit the nail on the head, they at least open up the kind of default ways that I work, and I'm like, oh yeah, we could probably operate a little bit more like the film industry, or we could try and turn things around faster. I don't know, faster than 2 years. I think a healthier society is a more multidisciplinary society. The more we open up disciplines and see the overlap between them, the more interesting the solutions we'll come up with. So I thought I'd invite you to join me in a game today where we come up with some ideas of ways we could organise the world better. And at the very least, it will distract me from wondering why they didn't take that girl's testimony who saw Adnan in the library at the time that Hae was being killed. Why didn't they take her testimony seriously? So if the ideas are worthless beyond my vague distraction and expansion of imagination, that's fine. But as I go, I'd love for you to type in the comments and let me know any ideas that you've had for maybe on, like, I don't know, I think just sometimes when I've had a few too many gins, I'm just sitting in a pub and I just start being like, what if we did this? And I start like using the cigarette tray and the pint, like I'm trying to teach my daughter in Bend It Like Beckham what the offside rule is. So if you have ideas like that too, I would love for you to leave them in the comments. Right, the first idea that I had, and I tell this to everybody because I have no idea how to carry it out, no idea how to instigate it, and no idea what the roadblocks would be, but I am convinced that it's kind of a good idea. So I have 2 passports, right? Not to flex, but I have 2 passports. You're soon to be blue, but you will stay red. Not a day goes by when I didn't think about how grateful I am for that. It was a random lottery of the DNA I did nothing to deserve, nothing to qualify me for. But it means that as a human, I am not beholden to one government. So here's my theory, right? We all know that countries don't really make any sense, but they hold an incredible amount of structural sense, It's the way we make sense of a lot of the societal structures, and they hold a lot of cultural significance, a lot of history, a lot of valid sentimental feelings, and I'm not proposing that we just get rid of countries, but what if, just playing with you, there was some kind of global system where every child that was born, every baby, got allocated the correct passport for them, the one of the country they were born into, and at the same time, they were randomly allocated a second passport. Now this would be proportional to populations. It wouldn't just be like completely random. There would be a certain amount of each passport, but each baby would get 2. Second passport structure is woven into every culture in the world. When you're a child, you learn songs in the language of your passport. As you get older, the presentations you have to do in geography and history can pertain to your country. Every child gets sent on an exchange when they're 16 to this country, have a homestay, live with the family of that country, learn about the culture. When they take a language, they take the language of that country and learn it. This, not only one, makes us more culturally aware of different cultures. When you have a conversation at the pub, it would be more interesting because people would be able to be like, actually in China they do this, and it's like, well, fun fact, in Denmark, it would at least soften the same bias, stale references we all have because we all had exactly the same curriculum. If we all had more specific knowledge of lots and lots of different countries, we could have more nuanced discussions about globalism. And when there is a refugee situation, I will say when there is a refugee situation, because there will be in every country at some point, as there has already been in many, if you need to run from your government for any reason, or your country becomes unlivable in, you already have an allocated place you can go. The Swiss do this with mountains. Everybody in Switzerland has their own little bit. Do correct me if I'm wrong, because I got this information from a Swiss friend of the family who seems very knowledgeable, and we were in Switzerland at the time, and she showed me her bit of the tunnel, but who knows? Could have changed. Every person in Switzerland, right, has a little bit of a tunnel in a mountain that is theirs. It is like a 2-meter square bit that they know the number and reference of and can visit, and they know that that is their allocated area if there is a countrywide emergency. That's where they go. This is that, but for passports. You can even build in human rights that are like discounted flights to that country, and when you get there you can acclimatise to the culture much better because you already know the language, you already understand what's rude in that country, you understand how some of the systems work, you might even have some friends in that country. And obviously, for example, today if you get Iraq and Syria, you're still kind of screwed. There would still be less displaced people, there would still be less people to deal with, to organise and reallocate. Does that make any sense? I feel like there's lots of holes in that plan, but every time I drunkenly tell someone, they don't seem to have any. Or they do have them and I was too drunk to remember them. Number 2, again, following on from that idea, because the Swiss people fascinate me. In Switzerland, every man at the age of 7, I don't know if it's women as well, definitely every boy at the age of 17 has a year of army training. Everybody has to go. It's what you do. You have to spend a year training and working in the army. Not really for war in general, but it does mean that nobody fucks with Switzerland, on my understanding that their whole population is trained to go to war at any time. It's probably not the only reason people don't fuck with Switzerland, but I digress. Following on from that idea, what if in Britain, as many people as possible were given either mandatory or like at least like encouraged to do a year out, maybe at the age of 17 to 18, working for the NHS, being trained to a basic level, working in a medical centre of some kind. Because when, I don't know, a pandemic happens, most of the population is already trained to grab their hats and go. Do you know what I mean? And then also, we're also cutting down how many people actually need to use NHS services because everybody will have more than basic first aid training. How amazing would that be? Just say it. It would obviously be fully funded and of no cost to the individual because obviously it would save money in the long term. I'm not a mathematician or a financial person, but I feel confident in this fact that it would be cheaper. Just a disclaimer that I am going to be incredibly arrogant in this video, and that's because I'm tired and I'm cooped up, and I know that I know nothing about these situations, but as aforementioned, it's nice to dream. And I don't think we benefit from a culture that's constantly, before anybody's had any thoughts, to be like, you don't have any place in that field. You don't have any place here. You can't even think that things could be different because you're not qualified to. I think it's good to have ideas and then learn a bit more, change your ideas, rather than just being completely cut off from systems that do affect you even if you don't have an expertise in them. Number 3, we need to find a way that we can truly take seriously the age-old phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. I'm all for making workplaces better and more flexible and more beneficial for parents, but I also see a huge strain for those parents whatever we do. And as we go forward, it's ideal that our populations start having less children, and we don't really have a solution for people who aren't able to adopt or aren't able to have their own children for whatever reason, or don't want to but would like to play a part in a child's life. And we obviously have stuff like volunteering or being a teacher or being a nanny, but apart from that we need more structural things where I think everybody can be part of a child's upbringing without being the sole responsible parent. It also means that in abusive situations like, I don't know, homophobia, kids have more access to other adults that can help them, more perspectives, more ways of getting out of their head, and less chance of people raising their kids to be mini versions of them. Now, I obviously think parental sign-off is important, and obviously they would probably have last word, but I guess I'm also saying from a religious perspective, growing up in a Christian environment, and I'm not a Christian anymore, but I do see the benefits of it. So maybe it could be something like a kind of God-parent system, where like every baby gets like 10 adults from the community who sign up to have like more responsibilities, whether that's like childcare responsibilities, financial responsibilities, and therefore like have like a more official, like more sanctioned place in children's lives. I think it takes the pressure off everybody, and I think it'd be really cool. Tell me if I'm wrong. I may be very wrong. I'm not a parent. I'm not saying it has to be mandatory, but building more structures about it being an accepted and exciting thing for a community to do, and something that could be transplanted into lots of different kinds of social cultures, not just like Burning Man, yoga, oversaturated retreat, liberal circles. Number 4, hey, I don't know if you've noticed, but there aren't enough fucking jobs. Not when there's a good economy, not when there's a bad economy. I don't know if you've read this book called Bullshit Jobs. I sure haven't, but I have read the blurb and I completely agree. We are making up jobs for ourselves that shouldn't exist and don't, and when we want to consume less, there will be less jobs, and we need to build a system where that's okay. My suggestion would be, on par with research, at least going down to a 4-day week, if not a 3-day week. It would create more jobs for people without any jobs, and it would free us up to have my 4th idea, which is lifelong learning. We obviously have this a little bit and it's optional. Having a day a week where the government gives you like universal basic income for the day, that day is covered, and culturally you are encouraged to go and learn whatever you want, whether that's in a class and actually studying, or it's just going and researching stuff yourself, doing some creative writing, doing some woodwork. A day that society says is okay for you to go and continue to learn. It would create more innovation, it would create more jobs, it would make it easier to move between industries, which I think is healthy for the industries themselves, not just the people. And I would happily give up a day in the office for some whittling. Number 5, fuck short holidays. No, I'm joking. Have a short holiday if you want a short holiday. But what I'm saying is, from a British culture perspective at least, we need to cut down on flying. We all know that's true. Everybody's like, but we need to create a global world where everybody understands each other and international exchange would die if nobody could fly. But at least I can speak from a British white middle class perspective. I think a lot of people use flights to get a hot, sharp hit of escapism. It's not to meet the people in the country that they're visiting. It's not to learn about the culture. It's not to immerse themselves or be useful to work, because obviously they're trying to rest. But oftentimes being in another country on holiday is a theatrical backdrop for what is symbolizing in their head as a holiday. Obviously it's hotter, obviously it's nicer, obviously there's lots of nature. But in general, I think because we are sedentary so much of our lives, we stay inside so much, the novelties that we have abroad are actually just novelties we could have here. The workplace is structured so that we only get a couple of weeks off a year, and we have to like super relax in them. There's this big pressure on these holidays for them to be like the most fun, the most dramatic, the most sunny, the most different. I need to go to somewhere completely different in the world. I need to be a completely different person. I need to get all the relaxation that I needed from the whole year and get it into these 2 fucking weeks. So I would like to introduce a workforce that allows for more sabbaticals. Now obviously some workplaces will let you take an unpaid sabbatical, but you either have to save for years or you have to be incredibly privileged to do it. Say I want to go on holiday here for 4 days. That's kind of wasteful. But if I wanted to end up here, but I wanted to go through here and here and here and here and eventually end up here, and I wasn't too hurried and I wasn't too worried about money, that would be a very sustainable way to visit the country on my bucket list. And I might find some other cultures that aren't in the brochure or haven't been lauded or haven't been fetishized by my culture, but that I immerse myself in by accident and learn some stuff I didn't know I didn't know. It also means when you spend longer in a country, it's not so pressured on like you and you relaxing and you getting your downtime. It can more be about a change of pace and really making an actual effort to integrate and learn about a different culture rather than just like running about, snapping some shots, going to some museums, reading some summary paragraphs and then fucking off home. Sorry to be so frank about, I mean, I do this. This is a thing, to be clear, this is a thing I have done. And I'm speaking from a British perspective. Let me know if it's different in your country, but I definitely think that when it comes to holidays, we have a traditionally colonial mindset to that as well as everything else. And we need to sort it, Britain, sort it out. Number 6, a controversial one. And again, I know nothing about the world of fashion, but my idea for number 6 is bin seasoned fashion. So I don't know about you, but a lot of the purchases I've made with clothes have been because I know they're only going to be available for a short amount of time. I could go into H&M in the morning, and then if I pop in after work, the displays can be different. There's a false sense of scarcity around clothes that makes it very hard for the consumer to truly think about whether they would want an item, whether it would be useful to them, to try it on, to leave it in the shop, to come back in 3 weeks and expect it to still be there would at this point be raving idiocy, but I'd like to think that's at least the bare minimum for what people would need to really make a conscious decision about what they buy. People should also be able to save up for the items they want. Having learnt a lot more about fashion, I know the true cost of an item being made fairly is way out of my price bracket for how much I make a month, but within 3 or 4 months is. So obviously pushing for sustainable, fair trade, upcycling clothing is good, but I think also putting business incentive is either making it a kind of law or from a more free kind of perspective that I'd like to grasp onto is giving people business incentives to do that. If you're a company that doesn't do seasoned fashion and makes bits of clothing available for at least a year, say, you get business incentives for the government to do that. That would be cool. And the clothes could have labels on them so you'd know when they would be in stock till. Because it's all very well to tell a normal everyday consumer to do slow fashion, but at this point when there's fast fashion, it's kind of like jogging up the stairs when fast fashion's on the escalator like, see you later. 7, a cultural shift to more local art. This would mean that the culture of celebrity goes out the window because to be successful, and I think to be successful isn't just to be rich for most people, at least when they start out in their art, is at least just make, say, 20 grand a year, 25 grand a year, 30 grand a year if you're flying. But then because that is pretty much impossible, you kind of have to earn nothing or earn millions. People either give up or they shift their centre of focus to expect millions and to aspire for millions, when I genuinely think at the beginning of people's careers, they just kind of want to do their own art but also have the same kind of career trajectory as their pal who's really interested in geography and wants to like study soil. I don't know. And how do we do that? We change the audience. It's kind of what's happened with YouTubers and Patreon, I think, but if you built a system that didn't glorify global art as much as it did local, or at least had a balance of both, it could be, 1, more interesting to travel to other places. Imagine if I could go to Bristol and I didn't know half the names of the bands that anyone was talking about. Or if I went to Hull and their bookshelves in their bookshops look completely different to the bookshelves in my bookshop at home. At the moment, bookshops look the same, music stores look the same. Do we have music stores any moment? Am I from 1868? It's not as interesting, I think, as it could be to talk to people from other countries, because while it's nice to have things like favourite films in common and favourite music, it's scary when it's all of it, isn't it? It's scary when they kind of just know exactly what you know about culture. The Western emphasis can definitely get in the bin, but I also think it would give people a healthier relationship with celebrity, which is kind of what happens with YouTubers and Patreon, I think, a bit, in that if your favourite artist was a local artist, and they genuinely were, it'd be easy to get tickets to see their gig, and it wouldn't be that expensive, it would be more accessible and affordable. You might be able to see them in a coffee shop and say hi. I love Matty from the 1975, right? But the reason that the pull is so strong is because it's very unlikely that I will ever see Matty from the 1975 in person, browsing the shelves of my Waterstones, and that's what makes it's so much more exciting when you do see someone. And I think that excitement's nice, but it can veer into scary worship that ultimately leads to the bad mental health of all involved. Some of the ideas I've talked about today have probably been done, have probably been thought out before, but I don't really believe in original thought, so I guess we're all trying to join the dots and fill the gaps, and often those things can cross over. So I'm not saying any of these ideas are original, but they are things that I've thought about while picking my nose and walking around on my government mandated walk of the day. Let me know which of my ideas was your favourite, which one you thought was the most ridiculous and unlikely or the most ignorant. Tell me your ideas below, and I'd also love to hear if you guys are having more positive discussions with your friends on FaceTime after we get off this first wave of shock and like how our lives have changed and what's going to happen and oh, you're gonna die, because there's only so many of those conversations I can have in a week, I think, before part of my brain is like, But what are the solutions? Thank you so much for watching. If this is your first video, welcome. You can watch more of my videos here. You can subscribe here. These videos are free to watch because of the Gumption Club. If you want to be one of the people that makes these videos happen, you can join up here for as little as $1 per thing. And you can follow me on social media here. I'm posting a poem every single day on my Instagram, so I'd love to see you over there. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, Frog Snog out.